From The National, this is Trending Middle East. I'm Yasmin Al-Taji. It's Monday, July 21st. Here are today's headlines. Israel has launched a new ground operation in Gaza. The Israeli army announced on Sunday it'll launch operations in parts of central Gaza it has not invaded up until this point. That includes Deir al-Balah. This comes as the Strip's population faces severe bombardment and critical shortages of humanitarian aid. The National's Thomas Helm reports from Jerusalem.
The reason there has been less Israeli military activity there appears to be because the Israeli military assesses that many Israeli hostages are held in that area, meaning that they are much more cautious to send troops in. There's been bombardments from the sky, but ever since Hamas killed Israeli hostages as troops were approaching, the Israeli military has been a lot more scared of using soldiers when hostages are nearby.
The expanded military operation comes after hopes earlier in the month that Hamas and Israel were closer to a ceasefire deal. Progress stalled over the extent to which Israeli troops would withdraw during the phases of an agreement. There are also fears that the offensive might be part of a wider plan to force Gazans into a concentration zone in the very south of the Strip. It's a plan that's been floated by senior Israeli officials in recent days.
The reason the military's decision to launch offensives in Deir al-Balah is significant is because the area has seen relatively less military activity throughout the Gaza war. Because of that, it's become a home to many displaced Gazans. About 90% of the Strip is displaced, estimates suggest. And not just that, but it's also become a base for international organizations who are distributing critically low supplies of aid.
The death toll in Gaza stands at over 58,000 people, according to the Strip's health ministry. Medical sources said 73 Palestinian aid seekers were killed on Sunday, 67 of whom were in the north. It's the latest example of Israeli troops attacking Palestinians waiting for supplies, as the humanitarian situation in the region spirals. Hamas is considering giving Israel and Gaza ceasefire mediators until the end of the week to reach a deal that would end the war. If that doesn't happen, Hamas could withdraw from the current talks in Doha, and only return if proposals for a comprehensive deal are on the table. That's according to sources who spoke to The National on Sunday. The latest round of Gaza talks, mediated by the US, Qatar, and Egypt, began on July 6th. They've made progress on some issues since then, but Israel and Hamas are still at odds over a few key points. Here's The National's Hamza Hendawi with more.
The latest Hamas position reflects its often repeated desire to forsake a temporary truce and a limited hostages for prisoner swap and focus instead on negotiating a wider and enduring settlement. That wish is rooted in Hamas's fear that Israel will resume military operations when the proposed 60-day truce expires or when all the hostages are freed.
The sources said Hamas would only return to the negotiating table to discuss the details of an agreement that both ends the war in Gaza and ensures an Israeli withdrawal.
One source who spoke to The National on Sunday said the ultimatum, if given by Hamas, will be specifically a message to the United States and the families of the hostages held by Hamas to exert pressure on Israel to accept the deal. The source also said that the idea of giving an ultimatum by Hamas comes from commanders of Hamas's military wing inside Gaza who are bearing witness to the humanitarian tragedy and Israel's moves on the ground while frustrated at the slow pace of progress in Doha. Such a comprehensive agreement will also provide for the exit of wounded Palestinians to receive medical treatment abroad and the return to the enclave of those whose treatment has been completed abroad. There was no immediate confirmation from Hamas on the plan reported by the sources, but both the militant group and Israel have accused each other of preventing a deal from being reached by not compromising on their conditions.
Iran has agreed to hold nuclear talks with Europe's E3 group of countries. That's France, Germany, and the UK. The move comes after warnings by the Europeans that failure to resume negotiations would lead to UN sanctions imposed on Tehran.
There should be also a real intention for a win-win solution.
Iran and the US held several rounds of negotiations aimed at reviving a nuclear deal, but those were derailed when Israel launched strikes on Iran in June, leading to 12 days of war. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot has said France, Britain, and Germany would launch the UN snapback mechanism on Iran to restore sanctions by the end of August if no concrete progress had been made on a deal by then. Under the terms of a UN resolution ratifying a 2015 nuclear deal, the deadline for the three European powers to reimpose UN sanctions on Tehran is October 18th. But August had long been discussed as an informal date because of procedural reasons related to the snapback mechanism. That involves a 30-day review period. That's all for this morning's headlines. You can get more on these stories and follow our live coverage at our site. Yasmin Al-Taji, The National.